a court in Lahti, Finland, granted Mr. Simon Ekpa a tentative bail, meaning he could be released from Kiilamäkoski Correctional Center within the week to reunite with his family. Simon Ekpa's former lawyer, Ekpa, resigned from the case, prompting the appointment of a new, more aggressive lawyer named Carl Gomez. Simon Ekpa's trial, originally set for May 2025, was delayed and moved to June 2025, which triggered legal action by Carl Gomez to secure bail due to the extended detention. Carl Gomez quickly pushed for bail, arguing against the delay and advocating for Simon Ekpa's fair treatment, which resulted in the court's approval. Carl Gomez questioned whether Nigeria has the legal grounds or paperwork finalized to extradite Simon Ekpa, contradicting earlier claims by the Nigerian government. Simon Ekpa has been undergoing intense questioning and investigations by Finnish police over the last 2 weeks, likely connected to charges initially considered. The fact that bail was granted suggests that some of the most serious charges against Simon Ekpa may have been dropped, with incitement possibly being the main charge left. Bail is seen as a major victory, both mentally for Simon Ekpa and strategically in weakening the case against him ahead of the June trial. Although the National Coalition Party, NCP, previously disowned Simon Ekpa, his name is now reportedly listed again among their political members, raising questions about his political standing. Meanwhile, the leadership of the United States of Biafra, including Deputy Prime Minister Dr. Ngozi Orebweze and 40 governors, met to discuss major regional security and policy issues. I want to walk you through everything that has unfolded around the case of Mr. Simon Ekpa, whose journey through Finland's legal system has captured attention across continents. It all began late last year when Finnish authorities moved to detain him on suspicion of serious offences. In November of 2024, the Finnish National Bureau of Investigation arrested Mr. Simon Ekpa, a Finnish-Nigerian municipal politician and self-declared Prime Minister of the Biafra Republic government in exile, alongside 4 associates. They were accused of public incitement to commit crimes with terrorist intent, an offence that Finnish courts treat with the highest level of precaution. The Päijät-Häme District Court in Lahti, Finland, ordered that Mr. Ekpa remain in custody, citing probable cause that he had used his social media channels to urge violence and criminal activity in southeastern Nigeria. Mr. Simon Ekpa's background is crucial to understanding why his case has reverberated so widely. Born in Nigeria and later naturalized as a Finnish citizen, he rose to prominence as a leading voice for those advocating secession of the Biafra region from Nigeria. His actions, particularly the issuance of sit-at-home orders and curfews via online broadcasts, drew both fervent support and fierce condemnation. Authorities in Finland, working in cooperation with Nigerian counterparts, froze his assets and those of companies linked to him, believing they were being used to finance activities they deemed terrorist in nature. From the moment of his arrest, Mr. Simon Ekpa's detention made headlines. His case was unusual in Finland, where terrorism trials are rare. The charges stemmed from alleged offences committed between August 23, 2021 and November 18, 2024 in Lahti, where he was accused of inciting violence and collecting funds in violation of Finland's Money Collection Act. Despite an earlier detention in 2023 on suspicion of illegal fundraising, after which he was released, this second arrest prompted a far more rigorous inquiry. Finnish investigators spent weeks poring over social media posts, financial records, and witness statements in what became one of the most closely watched cases in the country's recent memory. As I followed these developments, I found myself reflecting on the human side of what can feel like a high-stakes political drama. Behind the headlines was a man separated from his family, spending each night within the austere walls of the Kilomakoski Correctional Center, one of Finland's toughest prisons, known for housing violent offenders and serious criminals. The isolation of remand, particularly under the Finnish system that does not ordinarily permit bail in cases of alleged terrorism, can be profoundly taxing on anyone's spirit. The legal process, however, began to shift dramatically in mid-April of 2025. Mr. Simon Ekpa's original lawyer, Mr. Namdi Ikaupra, who had represented him since November 2024, tendered his resignation. He cited personal reasons for stepping down, leaving the defense in need of fresh advocacy. Almost immediately, Mr. Carl Gomez, a lawyer known for his aggressive and decisive courtroom approach, took up the mantle. Mr. Carl Gomez's reputation preceded him. He had handled a series of high-profile cases in Finland, often securing favorable outcomes for clients facing severe charges. One of Mr. Carl Gomez's first moves was to challenge the continued remand on the grounds that the court had unexpectedly postponed Mr. Ekpa's trial. Initially set for May 2025, the hearing date was pushed back to June 2025. To Mr. Carl Gomez, this delay was more than a scheduling inconvenience. It represented an extension of what he saw as unnecessary detention. He argued that under Finnish law, the balance between preventing flight or interference with evidence and the right to personal liberty had tipped unfairly against his client. He filed an urgent motion for tentative bail, insisting that any further delay violated principles of timely justice. The hearing on the bail application was tense. I can only imagine the mix of hope and dread Mr. Simon Ekpa felt as he awaited the judge's decision in that austere courtroom. At stake was the chance to leave Kilomakoski Correctional Center, even momentarily, to see his family, to feel the warmth of home after weeks of confinement. On April the 16th, 2025, the Päijät-Häme District Court delivered a decision that would reshape the narrative. The judge granted Mr. Simon Ekpa tentative bail, meaning that if all conditions were met, he would be released from custody within the week. The court required him to reside at a specified address, surrender his travel documents, and report regularly to local authorities. But the principle had been established. He would walk free, at least temporarily. That decision sent a ripple through both Finnish and Nigerian political circles. For Mr. Simon Ekpa, it was a moment of vindication and relief. Being granted bail in Finland on charges related to alleged terrorist activities is almost unheard of. It suggested that the most serious counts, particularly those implying direct orchestration of violence, had been pared back, leaving perhaps only the incitement charge on the table. In legal terms, it signaled that the prosecution's case had lost some of its initial force, a development Mr. Carl Gomez hailed as a strategic victory that weakened the overall case ahead of the June trial. The news of the bail grant also carried a profoundly human dimension. After weeks of separation, Mr. Simon Ekpa was able to reunite with his family, to see his children's faces, and to find solace in the company of loved ones. Such moments can have immeasurable psychological benefits, bolstering resilience and faith in one's defense strategy. For the legal team, it provided critical breathing space. Instead of fighting solely behind prison walls, they could prepare their client for trial from the comfort of home, conducting interviews and gathering evidence in a more conducive environment. Yet, the bail decision also raised pressing questions about extradition. Just weeks before, the Nigerian federal government had asserted that it had completed all the necessary paperwork to request Mr. Simon Ekpa's return to Nigeria to face charges. Now, with bail granted, Mr. Carl Gomez publicly questioned whether Nigeria had, in fact, the legal materials in place to support an extradition request, challenging the earlier claims and casting doubt on the timeline of any future transfer. This back and forth underscored how intertwined legal proceedings and diplomatic negotiations can become when a high-profile individual is involved. Meanwhile, in Finland's domestic political landscape, curious developments unfolded. Mr. Simon Ekpa was once a member of the National Coalition Party, known by its Finnish initials as Kokoomus. In early 2025, the party's leadership had formally disavowed any connection with him, distancing themselves from the controversy. But as the Finnish general election approached, observers noted that his name had reappeared on the party's internal database of members. Was this a clerical oversight, or an intentional move by party operatives sympathetic to his cause? No official explanation has yet been provided, but the re-listing prompted debates about the party's internal cohesion and the boundaries of political affiliation. On the Nigerian side, the leadership of the so-called United States of Biafra, a movement distinct from the indigenous people of Biafra but sharing overlapping goals, convened its own significant meeting. Deputy Prime Minister Dr. Ngozi Orebweze and 40 regional governors gathered to discuss critical issues of regional security, policy formulation, and how to navigate the complex interplay between their struggle for self-determination and the realities of international law. Dr. Ngozi Orebweze's presence underscored the weight the movement placed on Mr. Simon Ekpa's fate, viewing it as emblematic of the broader challenges facing the push for Biafran autonomy. The topics on the table ranged from humanitarian concerns, such as how to ensure the safety and well-being of civilians in conflict-affected areas, to strategic considerations about diplomatic engagement with foreign governments. The governors pressed for clearer directives on security coordination, while Dr. Ngozi Orebweze emphasized the need for unified messaging as they seek support on the global stage. Although separate from the Finnish court's bail ruling, the timing of this leadership conference pointed to how events halfway around the world can reverberate deeply within regional movements. Looking ahead, the calendar is now set. Mr. Simon Ekpa will stand trial in June of 2025 before the Päijät-Häme District Court. The charges he faces are likely to be refined, focusing heavily on alleged incitement to commit a criminal act with terrorist intent. His defense team will argue that his actions constituted political expression protected under freedom of speech rather than direct encouragement of violence. Meanwhile, prosecutors will seek to demonstrate that his broadcasts and social media posts crossed a legal threshold, creating real risk and harm for civilians in southeastern Nigeria. As the trial date approaches, each side is gathering its witnesses, documents, and expert analyses. Legal scholars in Finland will be watching closely, for the outcome could set precedents in how the Finnish criminal justice system handles cases that blend political speech, international implications, and high-stakes security concerns. At the same time, in Nigeria and among the global diaspora, Mr. Simon Ekpa's case remains a rallying point for broader debates about self-determination, diaspora politics, and the limits of governmental authority to regulate speech conducted across borders. Through it all, the human story remains at the center, a man far from home, fighting to clear his name. A family yearning for normalcy. Lawyers navigating complex international and domestic laws, and movements on both sides of the globe interpreting the outcome as a symbol of justice or persecution. When June arrives and the courtroom doors open once more, we will see whether the temporary freedom granted in April becomes a stepping stone to full vindication or merely a prelude to a protracted legal struggle. For now, Mr. Simon Ekpa's weeks at liberty offer a rare glimpse of hope amid uncertainty, a reminder that even in the most daunting legal battles, moments of respite can renew resolve. His story is still unfolding, and as events continue to develop, I will be watching closely, reflecting on what it means when political conviction meets the rigors of international justice. As Mr. Simon Ekpa prepared to leave the walls of Kylmäkoski Correctional Center on bail, his legal team turned swiftly to the question of extradition. In January of 2025, Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, told Channels Television that the federal government had forwarded most of the requirements through the Finnish government and expected the right thing will be done. At the same time, numerous online reports proclaimed the extradition process complete. Yet a careful look at the facts shows those claims were premature. Finland does not have a bilateral extradition treaty with Nigeria. When asked, the Finnish ambassador to Nigeria, Ms. Leena Pilvenainen, explained that because Mr. Simon Ekpa holds Finnish citizenship, everything has to obviously be done according to Finnish legislation, which has very strong protections for freedom of speech. Under the Finnish Extradition Act and the European Convention on Extradition, Finland may choose to extradite its own nationals only to fellow members of the European Union or Nordic countries, except under special conditions. In the absence of a treaty, extradition becomes discretionary, hinging on both the severity of the alleged offence and political considerations. This legal reality presents a formidable hurdle for Nigerian authorities. Even if all paperwork were flawlessly prepared, Finland's courts and Ministry of Justice would need to decide to surrender Mr. Simon Ekpa, weighing his rights under Finnish law and international human rights standards. The fact that the Päijät-Häme District Court saw fit to grant him tentative bail suggests Finnish judges are already mindful of procedural fairness and due process, principles that would only strengthen Mr. Simon Ekpa's stance against immediate extradition. Meanwhile, in the corridors of power in Nigeria's capital of Abuja, officials framed the bail decision in starkly different terms. To some, the move was an affront. How could a man accused of inciting violence be allowed to walk free, even briefly? To others, it was a strategic opening. They argued that a temporary return to Finland's relative safety would enable Mr. Simon Ekpa to prepare his defense more fully, undercutting any surprise or public spectacle that might accompany his transfer to Nigeria. Beyond government offices, the Nigerian-born supporters of Mr. Simon Ekpa watched events unfold with a mixture of triumph and trepidation. For many in the southeastern region of Nigeria, his sit-at-home orders and calls for self-determination had become a symbol of both pride and controversy. While some credited him with giving voice to long-standing grievances over economic marginalization, others blamed him for disrupting daily life and hampering economic activity. The bail announcement brought rejoicing in private gatherings of his followers, yet also a sober recognition that the road ahead, whether in a Finnish courtroom or under Nigerian jurisdiction, would be long and arduous. Back in Finland, the atmosphere in Lahti's municipal chambers shifted. Local residents, some of whom had demonstrated in December of 2024 to protest Mr. Simon Ekpa's initial arrest, expressed cautious optimism that the case would proceed without undue delay or partisan pressure. The courthouse itself, normally a quiet place where tax disputes and landlord-tenant cases predominate, now reverberated with the gravity of international politics. This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.